Okay, so we're going to start Bryce here. And first thing I'm going to do is set up my document, of course, and my animation. So I'm going to go to File, Animation Setup. Okay, and the assignment calls for 10 frames per second, so it says FPS. I'm going to change that to 10. And then under Duration, we're just going to change the duration to be 1 second. We're also going to choose Repeat under Play, because we want this to be a continuous loop that repeats over and over again. Okay, next I'm going to go to Document Setup. The assignment also calls for 1 to 50% render resolution. Okay, and also we're going to use the default screen size 540 by 405. And I have to change that back to 50% resolution there. So 1 to 50, and the dimensions are 540 by 405. Check mark. Okay, now we're ready to begin our animation. So I'm going to turn the camera over to Director. I'm going to rotate the screen here a little bit. Choose Camera to Director again, so it moves to where I'm sitting. And now we can begin. So I'm going to start with a cone, and I'm going to use a sphere to rotate around it in a smooth loop. Okay. Now I'll click on my sphere. And I need the sphere obviously to be away from the cone here if it's going to rotate around it. So I'm going to go to a top view and then just use my repositioning axis tools to move it away from the cone for a good place to start. Okay, now I'm going to go back to Director's View. Move the ball out a little bit more, and that's where we're going to start our loop here. Okay, so to animate or to keyframe the ball's position movement, I'm going to do it from a top view. So I want to make sure I set up my animation. My animation tools are selected down below. Okay. And first thing I want to do is make sure auto key is on, which it is. That's good. So make sure auto key is checked, and then you're ready to begin your animation. Okay, so click the plus sign here to the left of the key to start it. You have to do that first. You have to create a first keyframe. Then you're going to move your scrub tool along your timeline here. And then you're going to move your object. And you can see the keyframes that are being created. Same thing, move your scrub key along the timeline a little ways toward the end, and then move your object. So that's the basic principle of keyframing on the computer. Moving the scrub key along the timeline on the bottom, and then moving your object. Same thing, move it a couple more frames. My mouse here isn't cooperating. Okay, then you're going to move that along. Okay, then you go to your final keyframe, your 10th, and move close to where you started. Now notice here that I'm leaving the ball a little bit further away from the starting point. There's a reason for that. Okay, you don't want to get your end point right up next to your starting point. The reason why is because it'll create a gap. It'll create a stop. And you want this ball to move as smoothly as possible. Okay? So your loop should look something like this. It should look pretty smooth. But if you notice there, it stops at the end there. So now watch what happens here when I move the end point almost on top of the beginning point. So you can grab your keyframes and actually move them. And now the endpoint's right over the beginning. So the ball is going to end exactly where it starts. But watch the gap that gets created as a result. See how it stops there? If you watch it from this angle too, you can see it. See how it pauses? So to avoid that pause, those 2 points, the beginning and the ending points, should be somewhat apart, believe it or not. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom back in from a top view, and I'm going to move those apart until I feel like it's moving pretty smoothly. So again, I'll grab my endpoint, and notice here I'm moving them away from each other. So that's another nice feature of Bryce, is that you can just grab the key points and okay, it's still a little jumpy. But what you do is just keep trying moving them apart until you feel like you get the smoothest motion between those 2 points. Okay, that's getting better. Still a little, the computer is a little laggy here. It actually does look smooth, but the computer's not really showing it while I'm trying to record this. So yeah, and so you can also change the overall curve of your points, and I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second here. You can also reposition these, and it's kind of jumping there from one point to the other. You can also go on these key points and move these around too. Another cool thing is I can hold down T and click left or right with the mouse, and watch what happens. You can change the nature of the curve. Again, all I'm doing is get on a point, I'm holding down T and then dragging the mouse left or right, and watch what happens. You can increase the curve, or you can sharpen it to more of a point. Okay, so same thing, T, and then you can adjust that, and you can make it more, maybe more of a loop and less angular. Just going to fiddle with these points a little more until I feel like it's looking really smooth. It's looking pretty good. Okay, and then go from a director's view and look at it. Okay, it's looking pretty smooth, not too bad. Still a little gap. Now I can go into the motion lab here, and if you look at these notches here along the position timeline under sphere, those are the keyframes. You can also adjust the distance between them here. You may want to make the distance between each keyframe a little more even. And notice here you can just click them and move them. Same thing as you were doing out on the canvas. You're just moving them in a more of a bar graph kind of appearance. These are the same things. Move those over and you can get some nice smooth movement. So that looks pretty good. That's about as close as I can get to being even between each. Okay, and also this here is your speed curve, your velocity curve. The steeper it is, the faster the object goes. But when it starts to level out at the end, the object will slow down. Okay, so the steeper the curve in the graph there, the faster the object will go. See, notice how it slows down right toward the end. Okay. To avoid that, you can just click back on the straight line up there. Click on sphere, or position, sorry. Click on position under sphere, and then click the straight line, and you're back to where you started there. So I would just leave that alone. I just wanted to show you that. Okay, and then you can create your loop. Okay, and once you feel like it's looking pretty smooth, then you might want to start playing with the different keyframes. So you can also move them vertically. So you can have the ball go up in the air maybe. So I'm going to try to create some dynamicism here, make the ball go up in the air. You can try something like that. You can make it bounce if you want. In this case, I'm just going to have it do one smooth loop up in the air and then come back down, and maybe bounce it too. Okay. Okay, so I have the ball going up there. But if you notice, if you look carefully, you'll see the ball go under the floor here as it's coming down. That's not good. I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to bring these points up just to make sure it's above the surface here. Okay, and play it. Okay, and that's looking pretty good. It's not going underneath the floor, at least. Bring it down just a hair. Almost looked like it was off the ground at that point. Okay, so that's working pretty well. So the next thing I may want to do is create the illusion that the ball is squashing a little bit as it hits the ground, as the pressure's pushing down into the ball. So I'm going to make the ball look kind of squashed here at the beginning and at the end keyframes. And remember, auto key is already on, so whatever you do to the ball at any point, it's going to the animator's going to remember it and keyframe it for you. So there I'm giving the ball like a squished effect. Then I can just use the next keyframe fast forward button, have it sort of reshape itself. Okay. Bring it up a little more there. So there it's kind of reshaping. Then it's going to come down, and probably at the end point I need to squish it too. Okay. So I'm going to go to the very last, and I'm going to squish it there as well. Okay. So by the time it hits the last keyframe, it's already starting to misshape, which is what I want. And so there you get the illusion that the ball is actually being subject to gravity and the pressure of hitting the ground. Okay. Okay, so here I'm going to bring it up just a little bit more so it doesn't look like it's squashing so soon. And you get this illusion that the ball is actually being misshapen by physics, hitting the ground too hard from being up in the air. And it creates a believable effect. Okay, and notice here the render size is half the size of our canvas, which is what you want. Okay. Now I'm going to change the sky to flat gray. The assignment calls for a flat gray sky, so make sure that you follow that. Okay. Because I just want to focus on the animation, not the sky. Computer's wigging out here. Another thing I want to show you is this little film strip down here on the bottom by the play controls. If you click that film strip, it'll render all the frames, and then your nano preview in the upper left show you the loop. So you can actually preview your video by clicking that little film strip and see how it's coming out. Okay? So that's basically it. You want to create a smooth loop, keyframe it, and also maybe misshape the ball.